YouTube, this is Glover, first name Glover and not the last name Glover, so don't get it twisted. And welcome back to another true crime video on Accessunknown. For a bride, her wedding day is supposed to be one of the most precious and happy moments of her life. You know, it marks a new beginning, a new journey in life with the love of her life. Disgruntled exes may try to ruin the bride's special day with petty acts and tantrums, but what if that petty ex, boyfriend or girlfriend, snaps and decides, if I can't have you, no one can, and goes on to commit a heinous crime? Unfortunately, this was tragically the case for Gladys Ricart, whose gorgeous white gown was splashed with red, not by roses, but with blood. Before I delve into the details of the case, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to my channel. I've got a lot of more exciting things to come, so you do not want to miss on it. For Gladys Ricart, the best day of her life would unfortunately be her last one. A fate decided for her by her ex-boyfriend, Agustin Garcia. Now let's dive into the details of the case of the wedding day killer. Before I proceed, trigger alert, for there are some sensitive scenes ahead that may not be. Old accountant who worked in New York. Until 1990, she lived on welfare as a file clerk at CTN Tours, a Manhattan-based travel agency. She also got an accounting degree and was promoted to the position of accounts payable manager. She lived in a two-story home in the Ridgefield suburbs of New Jersey with her 20-year-old son from a previous relationship and her mother. Just about 9 months before her wedding day, she had ended a 7-year relationship with Agustin Garcia. Her neighbors and relatives stated that not only was Garcia abusive and violent towards her, but he also stalked her after they broke up. Well, sounds like she dumped Garcia for the better, right? She soon met 36-year-old James Preston Jr., an accountant who worked down the street from her, and it was love at first sight. The lovely couple decided to get married on the 26th of September 1999. In their wedding invitation, they described their relationship as a page right of a fairy tale. Ricart described her fiancé James as someone who brightened her life and gave love a new meaning. She wrote that they both loved each other without an end in sight and shared beautiful dreams about their future as a married couple. She still kept in touch with Garcia, however, and was trying to help him turn his life around, according to her friend, Joseph Benavani. In fact, the weekend before her wedding, she had spent some time with Garcia. On her wedding evening, Gladys was dressed in a gorgeous white gown, complete with a lacy top and a stunning tiara. With a beaming smile, she posed for a picture in her front yard with her 9 bridesmaids who wore pale green dresses. She looked absolutely radiant, but soon she would breathe her last breath. She would never walk down the aisle in the church at Flushing, New York, where her fiancé eagerly waited for her. She would never experience a blissful married life. Within about 5 minutes, her life would change forever. In 1999, the then 47-year-old Agustin Garcia from North Bergen, New Jersey, was living the American dream. He had arrived in New York in the late 1970s and was an inspiration to all other Dominican immigrants in Washington Heights. He proved that hard work and a good education would reap definite rewards. He was a recently divorced single father with 2 children, and he was a successful businessman who always wore sharply tailored suits and owned a black Jeep Cherokee. He was also the president of a local chamber of commerce and ran a daycare center that doubled as a vocational school. He met Gladys Ricart when they rode the subway together, and they soon began their courtship. He took her to several high. In 1996, he was the Grand Marshal of the Dominican Day Parade, where he soaked in the glory of being cheered on by thousands of spectators. He was a selfless advocate who embodied immigrant hopes and did everything he could to bolster the Dominican political power. At the same time, he spent nearly 2 decades trying to alleviate the suffering and poverty amongst the city's most troubled group of immigrants. Agustin Garcia, the president of the National Supermarket Association, called Garcia, quotes, a first-class guy who was capable of leading the Dominican community, end quote. So, this picture-perfect reputation of a smart, articulate guy who was full of great ideas would soon come shattering down on the afternoon of 26th of September. Distraught over his ex-girlfriend's marriage to another man just 9 months after she entered their 7-year relationship, Garcia decided to take matters into his own hands. The radiant Gladys Ricart stood in the living room of her house, flaunting her white lacy wedding dress just a few minutes before her wedding that was scheduled to begin at 4 p.m. on the afternoon of 26th of September. Distraught over his ex-girlfriend's marriage to another man just 9 months after she entered their 7-year relationship, Garcia decided to take matters into his own hands. The radiant Gladys Ricart stood in the living room of her house, flaunting her white lacy wedding dress just a few minutes before her wedding that was scheduled to begin at 4 p.m. She was surrounded by her close friends and family and was handing out bouquets to her bridesmaids. Just then, a man appeared at the door wearing a suit and carrying a briefcase. He claimed that he was a wedding guest. He then proceeded to pull out a .38 caliber revolver from his briefcase and shoot Ricart twice in front of her son and other relatives gathered at the house. As Garcia's brother tackled the man to the floor, he managed to fire 3 additional times and 1 more bullet hit Gladys. Sadly, she died right there and then, because of the gunshot wounds to her spine, head, and upper arm. The man was none other than Agustin Garcia, who had been overcome with jealousy and rage. He had driven from Washington Heights to ruin a perfectly happy ending. That the love, selfless advocate and mentor who was making ripples politically turned into a heartless murderer. Had he decided to avenge his broken relationship with his former girlfriend? It was no surprise that the killing leader who decided to choose violence instead of being the bigger man. With the murder, everything that he had worked so hard for over 2 decades was completely wiped out with 5 bullets and a 5-second mistake. Or was it? On the 30th of September 1999, Gladys Ricart was laid to rest in the same wedding gown and veil that was supposed to make a special day in her life. Her wake at the Ortiz funeral home in Manhattan drew a steady stream of mourners. Apart from her family, friends, and ashen-faced fiancé, James. The Ridgeville police captain, Vincent Zacco, who was present at the wake, called the tragic, horrific event heart-wrenching. Ricart's family insisted that she be laid out in her wedding gown to help her rest in peace by turning the funeral into a wedding she sadly could never have. Yvonne Flores, Gladys' aunt and mother to her granddaughter, said that Ricart would have wanted every detail to be perfect, just like her wedding. She also said that Gladys wanted to have more kids with her future husband, the love of her life. Eva Ricart, Gladys' cousin, said her 16-year-old son, who was also present at the crime scene, was so traumatized by the event that he had nightmares about it. She said that he would scream the phrase, "Don't shoot her," repeatedly at night and wake up in a cold sweat. Her body was flown to her native country, Dominican Republic, for her burial. It was a tragic loss of a beautiful human being. The event shook the nation far and wide. The gripping trial that lasted nearly 2 years saw many ups and downs, and people did not know what to believe. When claims of mental illness were made by Garcia's legal team, Jose Ashton, a domestic violence advocate from Miami, donned a similar wedding dress like that worn by Ricart. She then started a 1,600-mile march from New York all the way down to the East Coast. The march also honored the 2nd anniversary of Ricart's death and Ashton's goal was to draw attention to the plight of abused women nationwide. He doesn't remember the gun going off, stated Augustin's attorney Fernando Oliver. Garcia pleaded innocent to the killing of Gladys Ricart on the 27th of September 1999 when the hearing began. That day, Oliver also had plans to claim that his client acted in self-defense when wedding guests jumped him at Ricart's home. The defense team also had an insanity plea up their sleeve. Gladys Ricart friends and family saw Garcia as a vindictive and vicious man who took away a beautiful soul. On the other hand, Agustin Garcia's colleagues and friends always saw him as a well-mannered, selfless act. If Gladys' cold-blooded murder proved to be true, nothing and no one would be able to explain such a selfish act, and it would overshadow everything that Garcia had worked for. Somehow, most supporters seemed convinced of Garcia's guilt, and even those exceptions who reminisce on his goodwill spoke about him in past tense like he was a whole new person. Maybe he had a side that he didn't show the world, said Alfred Placers, the New York Federation of Hispanic Chambers of Commerce president, who had known Garcia for 20 years and was his friend. He was a desperate man, said James Santucci, the prosecutor in the case. His office was planning to seek the death penalty for the crime that shook the nation. However, he was held on a $5 million bond. The trial went on for nearly 2 years, and the defense team doing everything in their power to avoid Garcia's conviction. They stated that he was shocked when he pulled up outside her house and saw the limos outside. But the question I have to who said she had witnessed him threatening her sister with a gun on 2 other occasions. Garcia's lawyers pursued a manslaughter conviction based on passion provocation on 23rd of October 2001. Some people in New York voiced their opinion in support of Garcia. They didn't question the assertion that he was unaware that his ex was marrying someone else and was therefore pushed into a binding state of emotional distress. The defense also tried to discredit Ricart, asserting that no one could be blamed for her death but herself, because she had provoked Garcia into killing her by marrying someone else so soon after breakup. What? They claimed that Ricart had played emotional mind games with her ex, who wasn't capable of committing such a grave crime, as he was a respected businessman in the community. The run for a passion provocation verdict by the defense was a dent in the prosecution case. Why? Well, because some media outlets took these accusations and innuendos as the truth to the public, manipulating the public sentiment. Some communities who Garcia had worked for gave credit to a new portrait of Garcia painting like a spur lover who has the right to avenge his wounded pride and besmirch honor. I'm sure that this heartless attempt at discrediting the victim brought nothing but grief to the Ricart's family, but the evidence against Garcia was undoubtedly strong. First, there was clear graphic footage of the entire incident, which shows Agustin shooting Garcia twice. The 10-minute long home videotape also showed him shooting her once again at a close range when she was already dead and lying on the floor. Next, there were witness testimonies during the 3-week trial in 2001 that Garcia had been abusive toward Gladys and had even stalked her for months before killing her. The prosecution played the audio tape of a 911 call that Gladys had placed on August 12th, just weeks before her murder.
I sent it to him about 3 months ago, and he's breaking my window because I don't want to open the door.
He's outside now?
He's breaking, yes.
Okay.
He's breaking my window.
All right, we'll send somebody right up.
Hurry up because I'm afraid of him.
In the call, she claimed that Garcia was throwing rocks at her window, trying to get her into the house. However, she chose not to get a restraining order against Garcia, for she didn't want to embarrass him or cause any damage to his reputation. Sadly, if she had perhaps decided to go against her good-hearted nature and chosen to get a restraining order, she might have been alive today. The evidence served as hard proof, and the jury of the Bergen County Superior Court was swayed. They opted for a murder conviction. On February 1st, 2002, Garcia, clad in an orange jumpsuit, was sentenced to life in prison for fatally shooting Gladys Ricart. The sentence awarded to him exceeded the mandatory minimum of 30 years in prison. However, Judge William C. Meehan said that he will only be eligible for seeking parole after 30 years. The sentence also included a 4-year term for possession and fire of an illegal weapon. The defense appealed for leniency in the sentencing on the grounds that their client had a 5-second lapse in an otherwise spotless judgment. Judge Meehan responded by saying that he considered it a stalking and unhealthy obsession, not a momentary lapse. Before the verdict, Garcia was allowed to address the court, and he turned towards Gladys Ricart's family seated in the gallery. He said that he loved her and he would have traded his own life 1,000 times before taking hers. When he was done, Letty Lorenio, Gladys' niece, and one of her bridesmaids who were present at the event responded to him. She described the lingering psychological and emotional impact that the shooting had on her and her family, and said that his mistake would affect them for the rest of their lives. In 2016, Garcia made a third appeal for a shorter life sentence. That was based on the grounds that the prosecutor's misconduct and other errors had deprived his right to a fair trial, and his own legal team had provided inadequate assistance. However, in May of 2016, he lost this appeal. Some said early on that Garcia's charms and confident demeanor and quick smile were just a mask that hid his stubborn and controlling nature. The murder just proved him right. What do you all think? Do you think justice was served to Gladys Ricart, or do you think Agustin Garcia's action was justified? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And I have more videos coming. Once again, this your boy Glover, not your last name Glover, but the first name Glover. Don't get it twisted. And I'm out. Peace.